Good morning, everyone, and happy second day of this series of webinars dedicated to share and to discuss around the outputs of the Atlantic CatMed project. I am Sébastien Verniol, Business Development Manager at Alphanov, and I will share this morning's session. To start with, just a few words about this project, and for this I will share my screen quickly, like this, I guess. It's not this one. Okay. So hopefully you can see my screen. So the Atlantic CatMed project aims at establishing a transnational advanced pilot manufacturing ecosystem for future biomedical products. And this to support SMEs and startups using key enabling technologies. So this project is funded by the Interreg Atlantic area. The consortium aggregates different partners from different countries of the Atlantic area, as you can see here on this slide. So NUI Galway in Ireland is the key coordinator of this project. To reach the main objective of this project, the consortium offers direct support to companies to enhance their innovation management and their value chain analysis. Those topics, so innovation management, value chain analysis, were discussed through the webinars that have been held yesterday. So if you missed them, don't worry, you can replay them through the Atlantic CatMed website. Today, we will focus on the leverage of effect of the key enabling technologies, so the so-called CAT. Indeed, CAT could have significant leveraging effects in different application fields. The goal being for the SMEs and for the startups to be or to become more competitive through the use of CAT. Photonics is one of the European key enabling technologies, and it is my pleasure to welcome Francois Salin, who, based on his own experience, will share his point of view on the leverage effect of the photonics. So Francois is currently the co-founder and the chief executive officer with Ilasis, an innovative manufacturer in the fields of the ultra-fast laser for biomedical applications. He is also vice president of Alphanov, the technological center in the field of photonics. Before that, he had various roles. Indeed, he has been working for 20 years as a researcher at the CNRS, the French National Research Council. He co-founded different companies around the photonics technologies, being involved in the position of technical chief officer or general manager. So Francois has not only a strong academic background, but also a strong entrepreneurial mindset. Francois, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you. So, perfect. Thank you very much. So sorry for this non-working screen sharing. I have something in my Macintosh that just doesn't allow me to do it for some reason. So I've been asked to talk about creating value from photonics technology, and I decided to change a bit the title, because I don't think it's and that's what I'm going to try to explain to you. It's not the way to see the path. It's more creating value with the photonics technology. And I will talk a lot about what I call frugal innovation, which is one way. It's not the only way, but it's one way that we took it. So that's the experience we have right now at Ilasis, and try to explain what's the how it brings us to the market, or will bring us to the market. Next slide, please. So the question is how to create value. So the way it is written in books in general, and the way that most of people see it is say, okay, let's start with the technology. We'll try to turn that into a product, and the product will sooner or later find a place on the market. So can you click? That's the general way of doing it. My feeling is that if you can click, the right way to do it is the other way around. It's first start from the market, start from the needs and what people really want, and then you can define what's the product that will help them with the needs. And of course, in order to get the product, you need to find the right technology. But it's really this way around. And most of the users in the market don't care about the technology that's going to be used to solve their problem. So if you can click one or twice even, we'll do two. Okay, so the market gives you the needs, the technology, and especially photonics will give you the differentiation, which is fundamental if you want to be something else than just another one on the market. So the other way to see it is that the market will tell you why you're doing something, and the technology will tell you how you're going to do it, the product, finally. If you can click. So a generic method to find the right answer to this that I will try to talk about is what I call frugal innovation. It's not the only one, again, but it's a pretty interesting way of thinking the problem. Next slide. So there's 6 principles in frugal innovation. You can find that over the internet easily. It comes from what we call the BRICS, a few big, relatively well-developed countries, but still with a lot of people in the country, and especially from India. And the 6 principles are easy. The first one is think and act flexibly. So really be flexible all over the path. Keep it simple. Include the margin, which is one that took me long to understand. And the margin is not the financial margin. It's a way to say include every people you can find, and especially include the ones that are not on the target right now. And in general, there's much more people in the margins than there are in the central part of the target. Follow your heart, do more with less, and seek opportunity in adversity, which is something I like a lot because that really makes a difference. So for a long time, it's been assumed that North, I mean, all of us, innovates and South copies. For once, I think the way they see innovation is something that's really new, and North should take a look at that. Next slide. So here an example. Where is Frugal appropriate? What do we see on this picture? If you click once, most of us will see a high-tech car and an old-fashioned scooter on the right. If you can click again, it's not the right way to see it. What I should see here is 4 people who need to move, and that's the real problem. They don't care about the technology. What they need to is to move from one point to the other one. And right now, what they have is an old-fashioned scooter, and they need to fit 4 people on a scooter. They can do even better. And an answer we can bring as engineers is, okay, is there something that technology can bring to move these people easier? Next slide. Oh, sorry, no, I forgot this one. The real need is the transportation, and it's not the technology, but the technology is the answer. Next slide. Another example is fridge. If you want to keep something cool in our countries, what you're going to use is a fridge. That's what you have on the left. It works perfectly well, and it does the job, but it needs electricity. It needs a factory with pretty complicated tools and well-educated people to build it. And it costs around €1,000, roughly. And of course, that fits perfectly the needs we have in our countries. And because we have all that, we have the electricity, we have the people to build the fridge, and that works perfectly well. In some place, in some occasion, it doesn't work, just because there's still a lot of place in the world where you don't have electricity, you don't have electricity all over the year, all over the day. So you need something else. And in India, in particular, they have this problem, but they still have the need. They need to keep things cool so they don't age too early. And a guy a few years ago, it's about 10, 15 years ago, had an idea that he could build a bridge out of clay. And the idea is not that simple. It is based on the fact that evaporation of water is an exothermic process. So it takes energy from the inside in order to evaporate. And that's exactly how the human body works. When you want to keep the temperature cool in the body, you sweat, so you need to evaporate. and it takes energy out of the body. So it built a fridge, which is just a two walls, so two side clay closet. You put water in between the two walls. Because it's hot outside, the water will evaporate through the external wall and will get the energy from the inside. That means will cool down the central part. Of course, you're not going to make ice with it, but it's not the problem again. The problem is just to keep food and beverage good enough for a few days. And that fits perfectly the needs. So again, it's a technological answer to the right problem. And it's good because it's a standalone system. You don't need electricity. It can be handmade. So there are a lot of people who can make that. And it costs roughly 21 euro right now. And that was a very big success in India because it's exactly answered the question they had. Next slide, please. Another part of the Frugal innovation is to think flexibly. And that's very interesting. Let's assume we have one problem, which is to move ice cream or whatever needs to be keep cool through deserts. The answer we'll have is to take a truck. We'll take the right truck. We'll take a refrigerated truck, and we can have a big one, and we'll send it to the desert and try to travel through it. And of course, what will happen for sure is that we're going to be stuck in the sand, because that's what happened to truck almost most of the time. So this is a particular market. We have one need, which is to travel with cool items, but do not forget the rest of the problem is to travel through the desert. And if you can click, we'll find the right solution for that. It's a local solution. So the right solution is this guy with a camel, which is the perfect truck for deserts. It's not refrigerated. So he had technology, he had a solar panel, he had some cooling item on the top of the camel. And this is a real good solution for moving cool stuff through deserts. And if you have plenty, you just add more camels. We can find camels easily. So it's really flexible. And that's the way to think about it. It's okay, we have one solution in our country. It might not be the right solution in other countries or other environment, whether it's countries or other places. Next slide, please. So of course, I've tried to convince you that frugal innovation is something very interesting. It's not always the answer, and that you can find this picture of a perfect wrong answer. That's a frugal. It's an American guy who just took a coal and put it in front of his car. Of course, he doesn't need a motor, but in his country, this is not the right solution. In his place, there's much better way of thinking transportation in the US than just using this solution. Next slide. So I will try to show you that even large Occidental firms can think frugal. And as case study, I took GE, you know GE Corporation. It's one of the largest US company. It's about $150 billion revenue. It's diversified high-tech company, and they have a division that makes ultrasound machines. So ultrasound machines are used to take pictures of almost any kind of soft tissues and blood vessels in human body, and it's used in a lot of different conditions: cardiology, obstetrics, general radiology, etc. So it's been designed from the beginning to do everything. If you look at next slide, they had in the 90s at General Electric, they have this kind of product, which is an ultrasound machine. It's been developed in the US and Japan. As you can see, it's pretty sophisticated. A lot of computers, a lot of different things in order to fit any kind of use. It costs about $100,000, or even more than that. And most of the people that can use it are sophisticated hospitals, and you need knowledge to be able to use that. It's used in plenty of different applications, but it's too expensive, too bulky, and too complicated for most of the people in China. So it's sold very poorly in China, which is a pity because it's one of the biggest markets. So while GE was facing this problem, so if we look at next slide, they decided to do something else. And the answer didn't come from the US or from Japan. The answer came from a local team in China that uses and leverage the global sources at GE. So they took all the technology that the General Electric had in the whole company, but it took it with the China way of thinking. And they decided to develop a portable ultrasound machine that will not do everything, but will do exactly what they need. And they designed the first one, which was about $30K in China. And it's used in China in rural clinics, but it's also used in Western countries for mobile stuff like ambulance squads and emergency rooms. And it has multiple users, but it is in general focused on one or two users, not everything. Next slide. So it even evolves to get simpler. So whether, I mean, when you start with a very frugal product, doesn't mean that you're stuck with something very simple. It can evolve. Next slide. And it did evolve to a global market, and they improve it. They went down to something like, looks like a cell phone, and it sells now for $5,000 in China. And what's very interesting is that it increased a lot the market for GE, and multiplied by almost how many 50 or almost 100 now the market, just because it fits the needs of the people and the customers. So when you think in terms of customers, not in terms of technology, that can have a large impact on the revenue and the value of the company. And now it's available everywhere in China, but also in the Western countries for some specific application. So it could create value even for a high-tech group like GE. Next slide. They did it again because it was success, and they did it again with an electrocardiograph, and the same idea. You have on the left the Western version of it, high-tech, and on the right, it's also high-tech. It's even more high-tech, but it's small, very cheap, and essentially very portable. You can move it outside the hospital, which is what people need really. They don't want to move the patient to the hospital. They want the hospital to move to the patient. Next slide. If you look at frugal innovation over the net, you'll see a lot of different application in many markets: cars, healthcare, electronics, etc. So you can have a look at that, and it's pretty interesting to see all these different application of this state of mind. Next slide. So let's go back to what was supposed to be the subject of my talk, photonics. And I'll take my company, Ilasis, as a case study. At Ilasis, we want to address the market, which is surgery. And in particular, we want to develop a frugal femtosecond laser assisted cataract surgery system. Why cataract surgery? Just because it's the largest surgery market in the world. It's about 30 million cataract surgery per year. It's growing, of course, because people get old, and more people have to be has to go through the surgery. And there's about 18 million blind people in the world, just because they were not able to reach an hospital or whatever to be treated for cataract. So those people will not be blind within, let's say, half an hour if they can be treated by someone just with the cataract surgery. So the need is to treat more people safely, of course. And of course, we need to treat them at a lower cost, or at least at a low cost increase. The problem is that we lack of trained and capable surgeons for the surgery. So that's a real problem, and has to come into the equation. And the solution we propose is to use the laser femtosecond technology to help surgeons, not to replace them. And we don't want to make a very fancy system that will get the surgeon out of the place. We just want to help him doing his surgery faster and safer. So we developed a specialized handheld femtosecond scalpel, and not a super machine. It does only a few things, but we hope is going to be helpful. Next slide. Of course, there's multiple ways of answering this problem of lack of cataract surgery. In India, what they did is what they had is the manpower. And they took ideas and they transfer ideas from the industrial market. And what they did is that they industrialized the surgery. So you can see here the Aravind Eye Hospital, which is the largest hospital in the world for eye surgery. And what they did is just do what we do in factory to build cars. And now they have plenty of people, let's say even 10 people in a single surgery theater. And they can do about 250,000 procedures per year on cataract. So this is because they have manpower, but as you can see, making it simpler doesn't mean that you remove all the technology. If you look at the two pictures on the bottom, they still use pretty fancy, pretty complicated stuff like microscope or other systems, but they use only what is absolutely necessary for their application. They don't pile up in the room a lot of instruments that will not be used. And they even rethink everything. If you look on the right, there's a real strong impact of frugality here. They use this bamboo bed to bring the patient, because whether it's a bamboo bed or just a complicated bed, it will not change anything on the surgery itself. So let's use what is necessary, not what is not for this particular surgery. And they've been able to do it very high quality because they are doing it all the time, so they know how to do it, high volumes and very low cost. Next slide. In our case, we will not change the way people organize the hospital. So Ilasis decided to go to what we understand, technology. And we've tried to understand what's the problem in the eye surgery for cataract. And then the most complicated part of it is to cut a perfect 5mm disc in what we call the eye lens capsula, which is a very thin layer of about 10 micron on the top of the eye lens. And this is done manually by the surgeon with a kind of plier, what we call a Rexis forceps. And as you can see, it really depends on the ability of the surgeon to do it. And everybody thinks that there's about a 200 patient learning curve for that, which means that the 200 first surgery are not very successful in general. So be careful if you need to be to go under cataract surgery, not to take too young a surgeon, because he might be still in his learning curve. So we need to do something to help those people. And this gesture is so complicated. There's only half of the doctors, ophthalmologists, that can do it. And most of them don't do it because they don't do it too often, and they lose the ability to do it correctly. But that's not the only constraint. The constraint also is that it has to fit in the surgery room, the surgery theater. So it has to be small, it has to be mobile, it has to be autonomous if we can, and it has to fit in the flux. That means we do not want to change anything the surgeon used to do in order to do this surgery. We want to fit, and we don't want them to adapt to be able to adapt to our system. So the answer are multiple. If you can click, the first answer is this Rexis forceps. It's been used for over a century. It's pretty simple, but it really needs the ability of the surgeon to do it. So there's been a second answer, if you can click, and that was the technology answer. It's a femtosecond laser in a big machine. So it's a real one. This one, you can see the size. The stuff on the bottom right is the bed. So it gives the size of the machine. It's about 3m by 3m. It's perfect. It does a perfect cut of the eye. It works. It is pretty safe. Doesn't improve the vision of the people. So that means doesn't make any change on the clinical results. But it is safe, and it is very efficient. The problem is doesn't fit in a surgery theater. So you need to build a second room. You need to move the patient from one room to the other one. You cannot do the whole surgery in this on this machine because there's stuff that you need that will not fit around it, other machines. So they need to move the patient, and remember the patient is enrolled 80 years old. So that's not the right solution, and it didn't find its market. There's only a very few of these machines around the world. So what we feel is that there's another answer. And if you can click, the right answer is to use the femtosecond technology, but to fit it in a shape that's useful for the surgeon. And that's what we do. That's the Ilasis product right now, a prototype at least. So if you can click again, very simple chart to show you that, of course, in this cost and technology diagram, you can go, I mean, the sweet spot is in the high technology and low cost, and that's what we try to do. Next slide. But doing that is not so simple, and it's not easy at all. And in order to make this handheld femtosecond scalpel, we had to develop quite a lot of stuff that didn't exist beforehand. First, the fiber-delivered femtosecond laser. And fiber-delivered lasers, this is okay. Femtosecond lasers, that's okay also. But fiber-delivered femtosecond lasers, with a high power, I mean, enough power to cut the eye, it's not something that's on the market. So we had to develop our own laser. Then we had to develop a wide field diffraction limited focusing system. Most of the people use scanners to move the focus spot, and scanner can do any kind of shape you want. We don't care. We only want to cut a circle, and that's the only thing we will cut for the whole lifetime of the product. So who cares? We can write the name of the surgeon in the eye if we want. So we developed a special stuff that will do a 5 micron spot size in the eye over a 5 millimeter field. And for optical specialists, that's not so easy, but it's our solution, of course. It has to be battery powered because we want to be mobile, low weight. We need to be compatible with the medical regulation, which is another pretty complicated aspect. And in our case, we decided, for example, to remove any kind of software from the machine. Not only the software that we would put, but also the software that's hidden in a lot of small systems like all the electronics, for example. Now, whatever you buy, there's always a piece of software somewhere. So we needed to redesign everything so there's no software anyplace. And that helps a lot for the CE marking. And of course, that's to be low cost. The whole machine cost is lower than 40K, which is, of course, 10 times less than the price of the big machines that are on the market right now. Took us some time, but it's also innovation. So this development will end up in 5 patents, hopefully, and of course, quite a long time of R&D. Next slide. Just to give you a view of the history of that, the problem came from a surgeon that told us, and it's a professor in Bordeaux, told us that the performances of femtosecond lasers for cataract surgery are very good, and he was very happy with that, but he will not use them because they're too big, too slow, too expensive, and most of it because they're not integrated in the flux. And they move the surgeon out of the surgery. So the surgeon is asked to push on a button, that's it. And it's more than that. And it's very, very scary because it's not the surgeon that does the surgery anymore. It's the engineer that did the software behind the machine. And that's not something I like that much. So we had a first answer with this problem. And the first answer came from Alfanov and decided to change the technology. It means, okay, let's go for nanosecond pulse. And after a few years, we realized that that was not the problem. It's a solution, but it's not the problem. Of course, we can do it with nanosecond pulses, but the femtosecond was not the problem. The problem was more the way it's been provided to the surgeon. So we took the problem back and we built a task force with the user, technology experts, and industrial people. And it means people that will have to put that on the market and bring the product to the user. And I think this is what makes it successful. It's to have this group of people from scratch, from the very beginning, working together. And I'm absolutely convinced now, and I've been working on that for a long time, that co-working is far better than transferring. I've been the founder of Alphanov 25 years ago, almost now, 23 years ago. And I've been trying to transfer stuff from, let's say, university to industry. And most of the time it doesn't work. What works is really when you co-work from the beginning. That means you bring all the people at the same place from scratch. And everybody just brings his own feeling and his own way of seeing the problem. So we need to think innovation as an answer to the problem, not just an improvement in the performances. Next slide. So of course we've nevertheless did some work. We've developed this fiber every femtosecond pulses with something new. Well, that we had to imagine out of the box solution for this very specific problem. And the fact it's a specific problem means that we can do things that other people can't do because they want to address a very global problems, which is not the case. We want to address cataract surgery, not the whole market for femtosecond lasers. So we have a lasers that works only on a single operating point. And that's fine. Cataract surgery use just one operating point, and a lot of applications just use one operating point. So if you start from the application, then you'll get something very simple. And we want to focus only on a circle. So you'll see on the right, there's the pulse duration, the spot size in the eye. And my feeling is that when the problem is precise, the solution is simple. And I like the sentence from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, that's a French writer, that says that perfection is achieved when there is nothing left to take away. And that's very strong. And it's not easy at all. I mean, try to remove everything you can from whatever product or idea you have. You'll see it takes some work and some intelligence to do it. Next slide, please. So the results are not a product. The results are eye surgery. So you see on the left these bubbles cutting the capsula in the pig eye. You'll see on the right doctors not doing surgery right now. In the middle, it's just an ergonomy test. And I am the patient, so I didn't undergo cataract surgery, but we were testing the fact that the doctor can really use the system easily. It fits in his hand, and it's really the way he wanted to use it. And on the right, it's the same with pig eye. So we wanted them to see that it works to cut the eye as they wanted. Next slide. And I think it's the last one. In conclusion, I didn't talk that much about technology, but I had tried to answer the question, will we create value using photonics technology? And my feeling is that the value will come from the user, from the market. And the technology is the enabler for that. So it's really the way I see it. So the market, we think it's going to be there, 30 million surgery per year, growing, about 80,000 clinics right now, and it's growing again. So if you just do the math, just for us, it's about the 3 billion annual market for only capsulorhexis. Capsulorhexis is the cut we want to do in the eye. It's not the whole market for cataract surgery. It's only for this small act. And if we can take just a 3% market share, that would be perfect. We don't need to go for 100%. So such a large market allows us to stay small. And the photonics technology, in our case, it's what makes the difference. It's not the goal, it is the tool. So we need to use that. We don't want to focus only on that. And at the end, I will say that even if we don't get 3% market share, if we can improve people's vision, I think I will be happy anyway, and I will feel good. Thank you very much. And I'm pretty open to any kind of questions, whether it's on technology or on the way to put it to the market.
Thanks a lot, Francois, for this talk about the frugal innovation. I will have one question to start with. So you said that, okay, we need basically to have a market pull approach, but how do we find the right balance between having the technology push, okay, so having a technology and then maybe discover new things that can address new applications versus the market pull approach? How do we find the right balance between that?
Well, my feeling is that you need to spend a lot of time with the different communities. That means you need to spend time with the people having the problems. And most of the time, the difficulty is to understand what they ask for, because they will tell you, I need something, I don't know, smaller, or I need something that I can use. What does it mean, I can use? So it takes time to understand their language, and it's a long-term problem. On the other side, you need to take a lot of time spending time with the researchers that have ideas, and their goal is not to solve a problem, is to bring not to bring new solutions, to bring new ideas. And I think our aim, I mean, as transfer centers, is to try to understand where there's a fit. And sometimes you will understand that, well, I remember once we had a guy who wanted to cut pizza. And okay, he asked us whether laser can cut pizza. And that was the wrong question. The question is, how can I cut a pizza? And he ended up doing it with a water jet. And I would never use water jet to cut pizza, but that's the right answer. And that's interesting because technology is a good answer for a lot of problems, but trying to fit the technology by force into one problem, this is in general a failure. It's very rare that technology will force the solution. So it really takes time to understand the real problem to see whether I can bring something new. And of course, as we say, I mean, the term key enabling technology is a good word because it's enabling. It's not a solution. It enables us to answer something. So it's really a question of bringing, again, people together and let them talk. You'll see it's pretty funny when you have a real user talking to a real researcher. They don't understand anything for weeks and months. And then at some point, they discover that finally they do the same. They're just trying to find something new. It's fine. It's just the language that's different. And it really takes people together.
Okay, and okay, taking that into account, so is there a way maybe to improve or to organize in a different way the transfer technology between, as you said, the academic researcher and then bringing the technology to the market, to the industry? So maybe there is a way to organize that better. I don't know.
Well, sure. I think it's always, it's not a single solution for anything. Sometimes you need a complicated solution that takes time in research labs. And I know that, for example, you're working on X-ray imaging, I mean, high-resolution X-ray imaging in Alpha-Nov. This is something where, of course, we understand the problem. It's relatively easy. It's make an image with a high resolution with X-rays. And then it's going to take, I don't know, maybe 10 years before we can talk again to the user, because we need to solve a lot of high technology problems. So it's not one single way of doing it. In our case, it was much simpler. There was already a start of solution on the market. So the point is to keep the eye open and start the right way. That means there's so many solutions that looking for a problem all over the world, and that's not the right way to do it. I mean, the people have lost their time by finding the solution before they found the problem. And finding problems, I think it takes also intelligence. I mean, it's not so easy. Understand the problem, trying to understand how I can transfer or can translate this problem into a technology. One guy who was very good at that was Steve Jobs. He was a pretty poor technologist. I mean, doesn't understand anything about technology. He understood the problem of people, what they needed. And he had the way to explain that to people that could write a software, design a machine. And it's not so easy. And I think it takes people like that. And we need to accept, I mean, as scientists, to talk with people that do not understand science, but understand that they can bring us something. Sometimes it's really, I mean, it's after 2 hours of discussing that the clear idea will come, and not after a few equations.
Okay. We do have a question from the audience. Yeah. So I'll read the comments. Thanks, Francois, for a nice presentation. Really like the idea of working with the margin. Is this not a risk, working with many new customer segments at the expense of a customer focus?
Yeah, it's very interesting, and that it took me long to understand and agree with this sentence. my feeling is that, and I mean, I understand that when someone told me, well, there's always more people who don't have a car in the world than there are people who have a car. That means if I want to sell new cars, should I focus on people who already have a car, and then I need to compete with all the other people trying to sell a new car to this guy who already got one? Or should I try to find a way to provide a car to billions of people who don't have one? Of course, the people who have a car, they have the money to buy one. So it's much easier. And it's not because you don't have a car that you will buy one. So it's very tricky. And it's not because there's a large volume of people who are looking for something that is a good idea to go for them. They might not be able to buy it. They might not use it. I mean, people might want to get a car just because the other one have a car, not because they want to use it. And more people now move away from cars for bicycles, for example, which means that it's something you have to take into account. But nevertheless, it's always interesting to see, okay, there's a lot of people who don't have something. Can I do something for them? And sometimes, I mean, not sometimes. In that case, you need to understand why they don't have this. Is it because they don't have the money to do it? It's because you don't have for the car, for example, in big cities, just because you don't have the place to store the car, or it's because of regulation. And so you need to go a little bit further and understand why they are on the margin. And again, you need fancy cars for some people, and I like very expensive and sports cars, for example, but it's not the answer. And I'm sure that Ferrari, for example, goes very well right now, and Dacia also. It's not the same people. Some of them might have two, and you might have Dacia for every day and a Ferrari for when you like it. It's not the same market. It's the same market. So they do not compete there. And it's pretty interesting to see that it's the easy way of thinking to go after what the other one have found as a target already. Say, new targets is something interesting.
Okay, thanks a lot, Francois. If there is
Thank
no
you.
more questions, I think we will close this session. So again, thanks to everyone for attending this webinar. I would like to acknowledge the Interreg Atlantic area for their financial support in this Atlantic CatMed project. There is still one session in this series of webinar. It will deal with the system models for the future of healthcare. And we are looking forward to watching this next session. So goodbye, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, François. Bye.